Hello, and welcome to the Woo is True podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nicole Garitano. I like to refer to myself as a recovering academic and healthcare provider, and I now help other people develop their intuition and really come to terms with this idea of science and spirituality. I am a lover of both evidence and divine coincidence. So let's see if you're in the right place. Are you someone who's ever wondered how spirituality and science fit together? Maybe you've questioned what you learned through traditional religion, or you've had experiences that you know have a deeper meaning and you just aren't sure how to figure those out. If so, the Woo is True is for you. In this podcast, I want to make the practical mystical and the mystical practical, because I know there's a way to balance the two and learn from both. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and. Both practical and spiritual, both science and energy, both concrete and ethereal. So let's swap or for and dive into the woo. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Woo is True podcast. I wanted to take some time in this first episode just to introduce myself, share a little bit why the podcast has come to fruition, and really dig into this idea of science, spirituality, intuition. It is the main thing I've really been talking about basically for the past year. And so I feel like it's really important to finally give it more of a voice and a bigger reach through this platform of podcasting. So a little bit about me. So I am by training a doctorally prepared pediatric nurse practitioner. I've also spent almost 10 years in nursing academia, where I ran many different programs, also served as faculty, did a lot of outreach and committee work and, all the things expected of you in that environment. And so, for me, I've always been a big type A overachiever. I mean, I have all the degrees, all the initials after my name. And while that is important, right, sometimes by society standards, it really doesn't speak to the internal dialogue, right, or the conversation we have with ourselves about the impact we want to make on the world, our dreams, our desires. Like, we're multidimensional beings. We have multi-layered goals and dreams. And so I am a true testament to, yes, I was blessed with an amazing brain, and I've been given wonderful opportunities to pursue so many different levels of education, and that's led to some very unique experiences. And what I know to be true now is all of that was very much on purpose, preparing me so much for the work I am doing now in the world. And I just say that because I know there's probably people tuning in, and a lot of times people that resonate with me are those people that have been searching, they've been reaching, they've been overachieving, they've been trying to find the next best thing. And I'm here to say that those experiences you're having, what you've learned through that education, those are all special and meant especially for you. Like, all of that was definitely on purpose. And if you're still wondering, okay, so what comes next? What comes next? You're in the right place, because those are the types of things that we'll be digging into. And I'm here to say your what's next is right in front of you. You can probably almost taste it. You're not sure what it is yet, but it's definitely for you. And what's for you can't miss you. So also don't get stuck in this timed deadline type of mentality that we've also been very conditioned and trained to have, because whatever is for you, even if it feels like it's circled past, it will come back. Life is cyclical. Things go in cycles. So what's for you will never completely miss you. You may not grab it, right, the first time it comes around, but it will definitely be back. So aside from my professional background, I'm also a wife and a mom. I love pets. We have 3 dogs. I love people in general. I especially love children. That's why I have that pediatric background. And so I just have a heart for giving to others, and I love watching other people step into their transformations. I love watching other people have those aha moments about themselves. And I love being a small part of that. What I know to be true now with the work I'm doing in the world is that the answers really do lie inside each one of us. And we're really in a state of constantly remembering those answers that are already within us. And what I mean by that usually comes down to people learning how to tap back into their intuition. Some people may call it a gut instinct. Some people may relate to it more as God, source, the universe, whatever it is for you, whatever words you give it are just right for you. However, it's important that you understand the knowing is already in you and you already know. What's happening many times for so many of us is that we live in a super noisy society right now. We have social media, we have 24-hour news, right, on demand. We have lots of people with lots of opinions, and many times those people actually live under our own roofs, right? They're our closest family members, they're our closest friends that we spend time with. Everyone has an opinion, and so many times when we're trying to discern what's best for us, we're very much influenced by those outside voices. And very rarely are we taking the time to turn inward and listen to that inner voice. And that inner voice will never guide us wrong. So, the big question I usually get is, how do I start tuning in to this inner voice? And so I have lots of tips and practices around that. And usually, what I start with is letting people know you can't get this wrong, right? You're already designed to listen to that inner voice. And this is where I love to bring like my scientific background in healthcare, you know what I mean, into the mix. So for me, it's always been very much about balancing my practical training, very much with my mystical training or mystical spiritual type of experiences, because they do actually live together and they want to play together, right? They want to play in the sandbox with you, and they don't want to be like, oh, I play with this one friend on this day of the week and I play with this other friend on another day of the week. They actually do want to play with you at the same time. So if we think back to what it was like to be a kid and you really didn't want to have to choose necessarily, between friends or groups. Your the science of your body in terms of your natural instincts, and also that very spiritual essence of co-creating and listening to the inner voice, from God. Those actually want to live together inside your being. They want to live together in your mind, in your heart, in your body, in your spirit. And so, what I'll first tell everyone that's tuning in is that our bodies are hardwired for intuition. So we have specific glands in our body. We have specific nerve fibers, that run from our brain down into our gut, over our heart center, and they are actually sending messages that we can learn to interpret. We were born naturally able to interpret these things. And over time, we've relied more on our minds and less on our hearts and our bodies to communicate with us. And so that's the one thing that's really inspired me over the past several years in working with clients, is helping clients get back to that remembering, get back to that understanding, and get back to that way of communicating with themselves on a daily basis. And it's actually been through working with the clients that this podcast is even happening. I have had several clients in the past year say, oh, when are you going to have a podcast? I love listening to you. I love listening to what you teach. I could listen to you all day. And I'll be honest, like the outer voice, right, was, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could be consistent enough to come up with something to talk about every week. Who would really want to listen to this? Who am I to really go out there? It feels like everybody has a podcast. What's going to make me different? And I really had to spend some time setting some of that conditioning, right? The other voices on the outside aside. And when it just kept coming up over and over and over again, I knew that wasn't truly a coincidence. That was actually the nudge. That was the co creation beginning of, hey, take that chance. put your thoughts right out there on a regular basis. You already have a handful of people that have asked you to do this. So I had evidence, right, that there are people that want to hear me, that would tune in. And that's the other piece for me that's really important when I'm working with my clients is I help them gather the evidence. I know how important, right? Our logical minds, they want to understand. We're human. We want to understand, is the evidence I'm getting accurate? And following this, is it the right thing to do? And so we can collect the evidence, right? Every time we follow that inner nudge, we follow that inner knowing, we are actually collecting evidence. We see the outcome on the other side of it, and then we have evidence that we can move forward. We have evidence that it was the correct, best next step for us. And so, even in this, even in launching this podcast, I am following my inner knowing. And we'll see what evidence, right, that I collect on the other side. But just like a good science experiment, unless you know what I mean, decide what it is you want to look into. What is the area that you want to experiment in? And then, we usually set a hypothesis. If this happens, then this will happen. Or we want to test the hypothesis, right? To see if what we're thinking is true will actually be true. And so we go ahead and we run the test, we run the experiment, and then we see what happens, right? And we draw conclusions around that. And so I use a very practical strategy when I'm working with people so that it feels safe, it feels comfortable. People on the other side of that can gather the evidence and know what gets to be true for them. And each time we go through that process, we trust ourselves more and more. We trust that co creation is occurring. We trust that God, Spirit, the universe is working with us on a daily basis. And then in turn, we can start to move through our days with radical trust in ourselves and understanding we have this beautiful connection to something so much bigger than ourselves. So, if you're tuning into this first episode, I'd love for you to start playing with this on your own. What are some ways you can start leaning into trusting yourself in the small things each day? So, I always tell my clients when they're first leaning into this, what can you play with in terms of maybe it's just what you're going to eat next? What is your inner knowing telling you you want to eat next? And this doesn't mean, right? We're really conditioned. So many of you just heard me say that and you're like, oh, I know, I'm supposed to eat the healthy food. And I'm not here to say that maybe your inner knowing for that day is I do need the healthy food. And maybe your inner knowing that day is I do want to have that sweet treat. Not that you want to have 15 of the sweet treat, you want to have one of the sweet treat and really savor it in the moment. Our bodies know what we want, what we need, moment to moment. And I'd love for you to up level that and actually look at it through the lens of what does your body desire? Like, what is your intuition, your gut instinct, your inner knowing telling you about what you desire moment to moment? Because so many times when we're in a state of need, it feels like, oh, I need it. Like we already have put ourselves in this place of um, feeling like it's not attainable. I need it so bad. Like it doesn't feel as good as saying like, oh, I really desire that, right? Like I desire to eat the healthy food or I desire to have the sweet treat, right? Other small things like maybe it's around an activity you're going to do that day. So maybe you're going to do something with your child, with your partner or spouse, with another family member or friend. How in the small things can you lean into, oh, like what do I desire? What am I feeling is like a good thing for us to go do today? Where will we have a lot of fun? And it may be less about searching all the places or looking for events online and more about just spending time in the stillness, letting yourself receive the information that's coming in about what you should do today. So start to play with that. I started doing this really intentionally about a year ago, and so many things have shifted in terms of my outlook and the way I go about my day and the rhythm of what my day looks like. It's not to say that there aren't still tough days, We're here having a human experience, right? There's going to be tough days. And I also move through those tough days in a new way because I've committed to being intentional around following my intuition on a daily basis about what's best for me, what's best for my family, what's best for my clients, right? What's best for the world around me. And so there's a lot of opportunity on the other side of this, a lot of expansion within ourselves and beginning to see that ripple effect of our actions, not just within ourselves, but rippling out, right, into our households, rippling out into our communities, right, across our country and into more of that global landscape that I feel like so many of us want to impact right now. And many times we feel like we can't. But I'm here to tell you, you actually can. And it does start with this work. It starts with communicating with yourself again. It starts with remembering your intuition. And so, if this has you intrigued, I would love nothing more than to invite you into my free 5-day intuition experiment. It's happening October 10th through the 14th, next week. And over those 5 days, we are going to go through some different steps, some different practices to really help you start to clear out the cobwebs, right? Start to disconnect from some of the outside sources that really aren't serving you and allow you to reconnect with yourself and that deep inner knowing. So I ran this last spring. People that were in that event last spring are still reaching out to me, sharing transformation. So I know how valuable these 5 days can be. And it's something you just get to do for you. And I love to do it because it allows me to really serve and pour into other people at a high level. And again, it fuels me because I love to see the changes, the shifts that start to happen even in just 5 days' time. So all the information will be in the show notes or the description for this episode. But please, please, please consider stepping into the intuition experiment. You get to do your own experiment for the week, and I'm there to guide you every step of the way. And if you feel like, no, that is not for me, I am not getting, right, the gut feeling that I need to be there, that's perfectly okay too. What I would encourage you to do is start with these small steps. Start to reconnect through the small things in your day, each day, where you can lean in and begin to trust yourself a little bit more, where you can take the information you're getting and actually put it into action. Start to do that. Keep a journal, right? Collect your own evidence so that each day you're remembering and you're reconnecting with yourself. So, I am so happy that I have recorded this first episode. To my clients out there that are tuning in, thank you for all your gentle nudges. Thank you for your encouragement, because I really wouldn't be here recording this right now if it wasn't for that. And so I'm committed to showing up here, sharing content, sharing insights, and really helping guide other people to remembering themselves. That feels so important for the world we're living in right now. So I'm going to show up and do it probably imperfectly a lot of the time. And I also know that sometimes, even when we're doing it imperfectly, it reaches people in a whole different way. So remember, things don't always have to be polished and perfect. You can actually show up just as you are with the information that's on your heart and know that you can make a huge impact. So thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you next time. Thanks for filling your ears with possibility today. You can find all the resources shared in today's episode in the show notes or description, depending on which platform you are tuning in from. Until next time, remember, your understanding starts inside of you. So stay true to your woo.